I, 38 male, got engaged to my fiance, 37 female, about 3 months ago. We've been dating for almost 3 years. She has 2 kids from a previous relationship, a teen female and a tween male. Their dad is involved in their lives, for the most part. The adults all co-parent and communicate well. I get along with the youngest, but I've always struggled to build a relationship with my soon-to-be stepdaughter, Riley. She's made it very clear to me, my fiance, and her bio dad, that she doesn't view me as a parent and doesn't want me to try to be a father to her because she already has one. A few days ago, my fiance texted me to ask if I could pick up Riley from school because something came up at work that would keep her late. My fiance usually picks up Riley once a week and brings her to a chiropractic appointment to help with a sports injury Riley got. She told me she would call the school to let them know I'd pick Riley up because I wasn't on the approved pickup list yet. However, when I got to Riley's school, it quickly became apparent that my fiance had forgotten a call. The school had locked doors that require you to have a code or be buzzed in by the office. I buzzed into the office to let them know I was there to pick up Riley and that my fiance should have called to let them know. They didn't know anything about it. I waited outside for 5 to 10 minutes while they figured it out. I tried calling and texting my fiance, but she didn't answer. Then the school resource officer, an actual uniformed cop, came out and told me that I'd have to leave and that he would arrest me for trespassing if I refused. I tried talking to him, but he kept saying I wasn't authorized to be on the school property and had to leave. I had no choice but to leave without Riley. Finally, an hour later, my fiance called me back. I explained what happened, and she apologized for forgetting to call the school because work distracted her. She told me she'd figure it out and meet me at home. When she and Riley got home, Riley went straight to her room. My fiance sat me down and told me that Riley had lied to the office. She told them she didn't know who I was and had never seen me before. She thought it would be funny. She told me she explained to Riley how dangerous that was and was going to work with Riley's dad to figure out a punishment. Needless to say, I didn't take that news well. I admit I did raise my voice to her. I didn't yell, but I did get louder than I usually talk. She told me to calm down, and I told her that I wouldn't calm down because her daughter almost got me arrested, and she thought it would be funny. I told her that she's just as responsible for this as Riley is because she didn't call the school, and it put me in a position where I looked like a creep. My fiance thinks I'm overreacting and that I need to let her and Riley's dad handle this. Am I the idiot for flipping out on my fiance after her daughter almost got me arrested? Not the idiot. Part of Riley's punishment should be a written apology to the school's front office and resource officer for the stress and trouble her lie caused, clarifying that she does know you and just thought it would be funny to put you in an awkward position. This letter should spell out her newfound understanding of how serious this was and how reckless it was of her to toy with the school's efforts to ensure student safety. You're overdue for a conversation with your fiance about why you're not already on the approved pickup list and number 3 on the emergency contact list. Some family therapy might help establish boundaries and expectations and clarify why Riley's so resentful. Look, OP, you need to carefully consider your future with your fiance. Yes, she dropped the ball and didn't call, but Riley could have easily rectified the situation had she been honest. I highly doubt she meant it as a harmless prank. Riley's a teen. I assume she has access to the internet, TikTok, the news, etc. She's old enough to evaluate the social implications of what denying you would do, and she did it anyway. Unless she's really just that stupid, this feels much more malicious than a prank gone wrong. Can you feel safe, secure, and happy in this relationship and life when someone in it would actively try to sabotage you? Be very careful, OP. My wife works at a college housing. She's the person you contact if you have dorm issues or other issues. Overall, she doesn't make much, and due to this, she only pays for our groceries. We would actually be saving money if she was a stay-at-home mom instead of putting our youngest in daycare. So I pay for everything else, basically. We have a nice home and roots are planted in our area. My job is good, and I'm moving up the ladder. The issue started when she wanted to switch jobs. I was okay with this since she wasn't thrilled about her job. This changed when she applied to another school outside of our state. She got a job a few states over that will allow her to move up the ladder. Even if she got a promotion on the spot, it would be far from what I'm bringing in now. She told me she wanted to take the job, and I told her no, that it was a horrible idea. This started an argument. We argued back and forth, and she kept saying, so my job was more important? I snapped and told her yes, my job was more important than hers, that my job's the only reason we could afford this quality of life. She called me an idiot and isn't speaking to me now. I have a license to do my job, but I most likely won't be able to practice in another state unless I get another license. So yes, there's a good chance I won't find a job if we move for a while. Not the idiot. She wants to move the family and affect your job for the potential of moving up the ladder to the same lower paying role she's currently in. Abysmal financial and career decision. Sit down and calculate the ROI of changing jobs for both of you. I'd suggest she changes fields to something higher paying and with better job prospects, nursing, coding, etc. She currently has a job. Perhaps she'd feel fulfilled if she had a career. I don't blame you for wanting to keep your good job. You've been there for a long time, and it's not fair from what you described for you to have to lose that job for her job. However, it sounds like the pair of you need to communicate better. Surely, there must be some compromise for you to keep your career and for her to feel supported and fulfilled. My judgment is, everyone's the idiot here. I think it's out of line for your wife to expect you to quit your job. I think it's out of line for you to just shut it down entirely and say you're more important, rather than trying to discuss the underlying issues and find common ground. I disagree. The OP's wife is completely unrealistic. I can't deal with that level of selfishness and complete lack of reality. Sorry, but what nonsense is your wife spouting? Are there 0 jobs where you all live that she can apply for? If she wanted to move states away, that's a serious discussion before applying. Selling your property, uprooting, and if the money doesn't equate to the effort, and if there's no financial gains, is plain stupid. My sister Lane, 30, has 2 sons, Jake, a young grammar schooler, and Luke, a toddler. She's a single mom, and the boys have 2 different dads, both of whom are uninvolved. Until Luke was born a year ago, Lane and Jake had their things together, that mom and son time for them to bond. Jake loved it, and when it stopped after Luke was born, it really hurt his feelings. Lane told him that mom-son time had to stop now that he had a brother who needed her time. But the problem is that Lane has no problem sending Jake to me, our parents or our grandparents, while she spends mom-son time with Luke. A few times we've offered to babysit Luke so she can have time with Jake as well, and she's always said no. In recent weeks, Lane's been complaining that Jake doesn't seem to like Luke and has shown 0 interest in playing with him or interacting with him. She told me Jake refused to sit with Luke when she asked him to, so she could get some photos of them. And another day, he waited to eat his lunch until she had put Luke down for a nap, even though she knew he was hungry. She told me Jake wouldn't even touch Luke or look at him. I asked her if she felt like it might be jealousy because Luke gets some time with her alone when Jake doesn't. She said no. I told her Jake had asked for mom-son time from her, and she said no. She told me because he's a big boy and Luke's a baby. I told her Jake was still her baby too, and he deserved her time just as much as Luke. And she asked what would she do with Luke. I told her we'd offer to babysit so she could have time with Jake, just like we did with Jake, even when he was a baby. She told me it wasn't happening. A few days ago, she started complaining again about Jake not paying attention to Luke and acting resentfully toward him. I told her I explained how she could help, and she ignored me. She told me I gave her no valid advice. I said I had, and she ignored it. I told her she needed to let us babysit Luke sometimes, or Jake would continue feeling replaced and resentful, and she'd push him away and never successfully get him to bond with Luke. She told me I had no right to tell her what to do, and screw me, because I was still a kid, 21, and didn't need to interfere in her parenting. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Good on you for standing up for Jake. The poor boy probably feels neglected. There's always a conversation that needs to be had with older siblings about how a new baby's coming and how for a short time they'll need a lot more attention. But to just cut off such a close relationship so abruptly is confusing for a child. And it doesn't sound like she's trying to encourage bonding in any other way, like involving Jake when she's taking care of Luke. I'm saying it. Your sister is a horrible mother. I feel so bad for Jake. Your sister is the only parent he has, and that boy's already being neglected. He's a young kid. Babies need more attention than toddlers, but he doesn't stop being your sister's son the second she gets a new one. She's creating a rift between these brothers, and if she keeps this up, Jake will only grow up resenting Luke. In high likelihood, Jake only sees Luke as someone who stole his mom away. Luke would grow up wondering why his brother doesn't love him, and that's not fair to him either. Don't worry, she'll probably find another guy to knock her up and neglect both kids for the new one. Young Jake's too big for wanting his mother's attention, but 21-year-old OP is a kid for giving sage advice. Is your sister okay? Please take care of Jake, because his mother couldn't be bothered to, and Luke as well. Jake might not get it initially, but he needs to see good examples of kids being treated equally. My mom celebrated 20 years being married to her husband, John, last weekend. They were throwing a party for all their friends and family to celebrate. My family and I were supposed to go, but I had to tell them we wouldn't make it a few days beforehand because 2 of my children were sick. We live in another state, so we had to travel to be there, and there was no way that was happening when I had 2 sick kids. My mom told me not to say I wouldn't be there and to wait and see how things worked that Saturday, because maybe everyone would be all better and we could still drive out and make it. But the kids were still sick. Our youngest was worse and was hospitalized later that night while the party was ongoing. Thankfully, we got him home Sunday, but it was a lot. My mom called me yesterday to ask why I hadn't found a way to make it work. She told me she would have thought celebrating my parents' 20-year wedding anniversary would have been my number 1 priority. I told her it wasn't my number 1 priority. My children were. She told me, of course, but she would still imagine I'd make it a priority to celebrate my parents' marriage. I told her, not in those circumstances. She said celebrating your parents is supposed to be a good thing. I pointed out to her that it was not my parents' anniversary because she had never told me about her and my dad's wedding anniversary. He died when I was only 6. And that while her husband is a great guy and I get along fine with him, she can't keep acting like her marriage to my dad and my dad didn't exist. For context, I said this to my mom because after my dad died when I was 6, she stopped talking about him. She never wanted me to ask about him, and when she got remarried, she wanted me to take her husband's last name and agree to be adopted. She pushed this narrative that he was now my dad and that it was disrespectful to her husband and the life they were building to mention my dad again. She would talk about her husband being her only love, her true love, and how he gave her all her kids. She erased my dad, and she argued with her own family from time to time when they would mention dad. Her family said she and my dad adored each other while he was alive, and they couldn't understand it. My mom's husband honestly didn't care about me talking about my dad, or mom for that matter, but mom refused. She was upset when I used a female version of my dad's name for my daughter. She was upset that my wife and I had a photo of my dad at our wedding. She really wants everyone to forget about him and focus on her current marriage. Anyway, during this disagreement with Mom over her anniversary, and after I said that to her, she told me that she had been married for 20 years, and I'm almost 30, so her husband deserves to be acknowledged as my dad, and their marriage deserves to be a priority for me. She told me she was ashamed of my childish behavior. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your children come first. That's obvious. There's something off about your mother, which was apparent even before you described that she had erased your bio-father from existence. No caring grandparent would insist you prioritize her celebration over a child's health, especially if they had been hospitalized. She's definitely the idiot here. I love how she says OP is being childish while throwing a temper tantrum about OP not going to her party because his kids were sick. Who's the childish one here? She must have been a peach to grow up with. Your mom's anniversary is not your parents' anniversary and literally has nothing to do with you. Even if it was your parents' anniversary, your children should still come first. What is it with all these remarried parents trying to stuff their spouse into the parent role and erase the actual parent? Yeah, in what world does she live? On this planet, parents should always focus on the well-being of their kids, especially if they're sick. That's an absolute given. For her to expect you and your family to travel that far with 2 sick kids is very unreasonable, no matter what the occasion. My son got a girl pregnant, Wendy, and since then she's been calling me constantly to babysit. I do it when I have the time, but I put my foot down when the kid was over my place 3 times a week. The 2 of them didn't like that, and our relationship became strained. He's getting married in a few months, and I received an invite. He called and told me there were conditions if I wanted to go to the wedding. The biggest one was that I had to babysit their daughter, my granddaughter, at the wedding. I asked if he was serious, and he told me it was to prove I was willing to be a grandparent and that I hadn't stepped into my role enough. After thinking about it, I informed them I would not be at the wedding and they could get a babysitter, and I was done with this. I informed my husband of my decisions, and he's on my side. I haven't hidden why I'm not going, and if anyone asked, I showed them proof of the whole thing. This caused multiple family members to RSVP no to their wedding. They both called me a jerk and told me I could come without babysitting now. I'm standing by my decision. Yeah, LOL, you've done the right thing. Tell him you'll attend his next wedding. You aren't invited as a parent, but as a service. I love that you saw how insulting this was and acted accordingly. And now he's realizing how hard he messed up. Then he tried to shame and guilt you for it? Screw that noise. He's now learning he doesn't get to treat people, even family, like that, and there are consequences to his actions. Service providers get paid. They're expecting the OP to show up as a guest, gift in tow, miss out on the event to provide a service, and not get paid. You, his own mother, shouldn't have to be put through some test. Willing to be a grandparent? What, did they ask you permission before they made a baby? And if they needed a babysitter, they could have just gone and got someone else. The fact that multiple other family members also backed out makes me wonder if your son has made it clear that his only use for his family is free babysitting. But darn, I have questions about your family dynamics. You know your son, I assume. What's his deal? Were you close before the birth of his child? Has he always been spoiled or entitled? Or is this new behavior? Have you tried to talk to him about any of this, instead of simply saying no to demands you're unable or unwilling to meet? Where is his head right now? Sorry to say, your son and the girl he got pregnant are not very smart.